The smart lock beeped twice, displaying an error message Harlan Witt had never seen in 15 years of emergency lockouts. He pressed the reset button on the digital panel, watching as the system cycled through its reboot sequence. For exactly 3 seconds, the screen flashed a cached image from the cloud storage, a woman in black lingerie pressed against a man's chest in what looked like Mrs. Pollock's living room. The woman was his wife, Delaney. Harlan's hands didn't shake as he completed the job. His breathing stayed steady. He'd learned long ago that panic was just wasted energy, and energy was something a 41-year-old locksmith couldn't afford to waste. But as he packed his tools back into the van, one thought kept circling through his mind like a key turning in a lock that wouldn't quite catch. Mrs. Pollock lived alone. "All set," he called through the door. "Lock's working fine now." "Oh, thank you so much," came the elderly woman's voice. "I don't know what I would have done. My grandson installed that fancy thing, but I can never remember the code." Harlan waited in his van until the house lights went out. Then he pulled out his phone and called Mrs. Pollock back. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious. Nobody called at 11:30 p.m. unless something was wrong. "Mrs. Pollock, this is Harlan from the locksmith service. I just wanted to make sure everything's working properly." "Oh, yes, dear. Perfect. Thank you again. I noticed the system had some cached photos on it. Just wondering if anyone else has access to your smart lock system. Son, daughter, maybe someone house-sitting?" The pause lasted too long. "Well, no, just me. Why would you ask that?" Harlan felt something cold settle in his chest. "Just routine. Sometimes these systems get hacked. Have a good night, Mrs. Pollock." He drove home through empty suburban streets, past houses where people slept peacefully next to partners who hadn't betrayed them. The 2-story colonial he'd bought with Delaney 8 years ago sat dark, except for the porch light. Her BMW wasn't in the driveway. Another late night at the dental supply conference, she'd said. Phoenix, this time. Inside, their 15-year-old daughter, Amara, had left a note on the kitchen counter. "Dad," Mom called. "Says she'll be back Thursday. Pizza money's on the counter. Love you." Harlan stood in his kitchen holding the note. Thursday. Today was Tuesday. The image on that smart lock had been time-stamped Sunday night. He opened his laptop and pulled up their joint bank account. 3 withdrawals in Phoenix over the past 4 days. All legitimate. All exactly what you'd expect from a dental supply conference. Except Julian Rake lived in Phoenix. The name had been rattling around in Harlan's memory since he'd seen that image. Julian Rake, home automation consultant. He'd done work for several of Harlan's clients over the past 2 years. Always professional, always expensive, always leaving business cards behind like breadcrumbs. Harlan found one of those cards in his work files. On the back, someone had written a phone number in blue ink. The handwriting looked familiar. He compared it to Delaney's grocery lists on the refrigerator. Perfect match. The house felt different now, like a crime scene before the tape goes up. Every corner held potential evidence. Every drawer might contain secrets. Harlan moved through the rooms methodically, not searching yet, just seeing his home with new eyes. In their bedroom, he found Delaney's jewelry box, sitting exactly where it always sat. Inside, tucked behind her grandmother's pearls, was a receipt from a computer repair shop. The date was 3 months ago. The customer name was Julian Rake. The payment method was Delaney's credit card. Harlan sat on the edge of their bed, turning the receipt over in his hands. The repair was for a damaged laptop hard drive, data recovery services, professional grade, expensive. His phone buzzed with a text from Delaney. "Conference going great. Miss you both. Home Thursday evening. XOXO." He stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Miss you too. Drive safe." The next morning, Harlan called his old friend Reggie Zahn at the police dispatch office. They'd known each other since high school, back when Reggie had dreams of becoming a detective, and Harlan thought he'd end up teaching shop class. "Harlan, what's up, man? Haven't heard from you in months." "I need a favor, Reg. Can you run a background check on someone? Nothing official, just want to know if he's legit." "This about a client?" "Something like that. Guy named Julian Rake. Home automation business in Phoenix." Keyboard clicking in the background. "Julian Rake. Okay, here we go. Clean driving record. No warrants. Business license current. Although what? Had a complaint filed against his company last year. Customer claimed he installed faulty security equipment, then overcharged for repairs. Nothing criminal, just civil dispute. Case was dropped. Any details on the customer? Elderly woman in Scottsdale. Said he convinced her to upgrade her entire system. Then the new equipment failed within a month. She ended up losing $15,000. Harlan felt something click into place. Thanks, Reg. I owe you one. Everything okay? You sound weird. Just checking out potential business partners. You know how it is. But Reggie knew him too well. Harlan, if something's wrong, everything's fine. I'll talk to you soon. That afternoon, Harlan did something he'd never done in 20 years of marriage. He went through Delaney's desk. Her home office was meticulously organized. Client files alphabetized, tax documents sorted by year, business cards arranged in a Rolodex that probably cost more than his monthly van payment. But tucked inside her old college textbook on biochemistry, he found a notebook filled with handwritten notes. The first few pages were normal business notes. Meeting times, client names, product specifications for dental equipment. But towards the back, the entries changed. Jay says the Phoenix opportunity is real, need to move carefully. H doesn't suspect anything. Too busy with work to notice the changes in accounts. Exit strategy needs to be clean. Jay has connections in Denver. The entries were dated over the past 8 months. The most recent one, from 2 weeks ago, made Harlan's blood run cold. Jay thinks we should speed up the timeline. H is useful for now, but the business has potential as collateral for the bigger play. Once everything transfers, we can make our move. Harlan photographed every page with his phone, then put the notebook back exactly where he'd found it. He sat in Delaney's chair, surrounded by the life they'd built together, and realized he'd been living with a stranger. His phone rang. Unknown Phoenix number. Hello? Is this Harlan Witt? The voice was smooth, confident, familiar from somewhere. Who's asking? Julian Rake. I understand you are in the locksmith business. I've got a proposition that might interest you. Harlan's grip tightened on the phone. What kind of proposition? I'm expanding my smart home business into your area, looking for local partners who understand security systems. Your name came up as someone who might be interested in making some real money. How did you get my name? Word gets around in this business. You've got a good reputation. Honest, reliable, doesn't ask too many questions. That's exactly what I need. The casual arrogance in Julian's voice made Harlan want to drive to Phoenix immediately. Instead, he kept his voice neutral. What's the timeline? I'm actually heading to your area next week. Maybe we could meet, discuss the details face to face. I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown. Sounds good. I'll call you. Looking forward to it, Harlan. I think we're going to work very well together. The line went dead. Harlan stared at his phone, processing what had just happened. Julian was coming here, next week, while Delaney was supposedly still at her conference. He pulled up the calendar on his phone and started making plans. That evening, Amara came home from soccer practice to find her father cooking dinner. Actually cooking, not just heating up leftovers or ordering pizza. Dad, are you okay? You never cook. Your mom's been working hard lately. Thought I'd step up my game. Amara watched him carefully as she set the table. You seem different today. Good different, but different. How so? I don't know. More focused, I guess. Like you have a plan. Harlan looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She had his eyes, but Delaney's sharp intelligence. She'd inherited the ability to read people, to notice things others missed. In a few years, she'd be off to college, starting her own life. He wondered if Delaney's plan included destroying that future too. I do have a plan, he said finally. But it's boring adult stuff. Nothing you need to worry about. Is it about Mom? The question hit him like a physical blow. What makes you ask that? She's been acting weird lately, secretive, and she's been gone a lot more than usual. Amara pushed food around on her plate. Are you guys having problems? Harlan weighed his options. Lie and protect her innocence, or tell her enough truth to prepare her for what was coming. Your mom and I need to work some things out, he said carefully. But whatever happens, you're the most important thing in my life. That will never change. Promise? Promise. They ate in comfortable silence, but Harlan could feel Amara watching him. She knew something was wrong. The question was how much she'd figured out on her own. The next morning, Harlan made a decision that would have seemed impossible a week earlier. He called Julian's business number and left a message saying he was interested in the partnership opportunity. Then he drove to the local electronics store and bought a small digital recording device. If Julian wanted to play games, Harlan would learn the rules. He spent the afternoon researching Julian's company online. The website looked professional, but something about it felt hollow. The client testimonials were generic. The project photos could have come from any home security catalog, and when he cross-referenced the business address with Google Street View, he found it was a UPS store mailbox, a fake business for a fake man pursuing a fake relationship with his wife. Harlan's phone buzzed with another text from Delaney. "Conference extended through Friday. Sorry, we'll make it up to you and Amara this weekend," he replied. "No problem. Take your time." But he was done taking his time. That evening, he drove past Mrs. Pollock's house and noticed something he'd missed during the emergency call: security cameras on neighboring houses. If Julian and Delaney had been using Mrs. Pollock's place for their meetings, there might be footage. He knocked on the door of the house directly across the street. A middle-aged man answered, looking suspicious. "Help you? I'm Harlan Witt. I did some locksmith work for Mrs. Pollock the other night. I think someone might be using her house without her knowledge. Wondering if you've noticed anything unusual." The man's expression shifted. I was wondering about that. Mrs. Pollock told me she was going to visit her sister in Florida last weekend, but I saw lights on Sunday night, and there was a car in her driveway I didn't recognize." "What kind of car?" "Dark sedan, maybe a BMW or Mercedes. I got it on my security camera, if you want to see." 20 minutes later, Harlan was looking at clear footage of Delaney's BMW parked in Mrs. Pollock's driveway. The timestamp matched exactly with the image he'd seen on the smart lock. "Should I call the police?" the neighbor asked. "Let me talk to Mrs. Pollock first. She might have given someone permission to use the house." But Harlan had no intention of calling anyone. Not yet. He was building a case, gathering evidence, preparing for war. And in war, timing was everything. Julian called back the next day. "Harlan, great to hear from you. I'm actually moving up my timeline. Can you meet tomorrow night?" "Where?" "There's a vacant house on Elm Street, 1247 Elm. It's one of my client properties, been sitting empty for months. Perfect place to talk business without interruptions." Harlan knew the house. It had been in foreclosure for over a year. Perfect place for an ambush, too. "What time?" 8 o'clock. "Come alone. Looking forward to it." But first, Harlan had preparations to make. He spent that afternoon at his shop, modifying his work tools. A lockpick became a punch weapon. A tension wrench became a palm striker. He wasn't looking for a fight, but if Julian wanted to play rough, Harlan would be ready. The next evening, he arrived at 1247 Elm Street, 30 minutes early. The house sat dark and empty, exactly as he'd expected. But Julian's rental car was already there, parked behind the house where it couldn't be seen from the street. Harlan parked 2 blocks away and approached on foot. Through a broken window, he could see Julian setting up some kind of equipment inside. A laptop, cables, what looked like recording gear. Whatever Julian was planning, it wasn't a simple business meeting. Harlan circled the house, noting exit points and potential weapons. The back door was unlocked. Julian's first mistake. The second mistake was leaving his laptop unattended while he went to the bathroom. Harlan slipped inside and spent 2 minutes copying files from Julian's hard drive to a USB stick. What he found made his blood run cold. Financial records showing regular payments from shell companies tied to Delaney's business account. Audio recordings of phone conversations between Julian and Delaney discussing the locksmith problem. And most damning of all, a detailed plan for filing false insurance claims on Julian's security installations, using Harlan's locksmith business as an unwitting accomplice. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning to frame him for fraud. "Find what you're looking for?" Harlan spun around. Julian stood in the doorway, no longer bothering with the friendly facade. He was bigger than Harlan had expected, with the kind of casual arrogance that came from always being the smartest person in the room. "Just admiring your setup," Harlan said calmly. "Are very professional." "You're not as stupid as Delaney said you were. She talks about me often?" Julian smiled. "All the time. Poor Harlan, working so hard for scraps while she builds a real future. She feels sorry for you, actually." "That's touching. Here's how this works. You're going to sign some papers making me a partner in your business. Then you're going to help me install security systems for a very select group of clients. Rich clients, clients with expensive things and inadequate protection. And if I refuse?" Julian opened his laptop and showed Harlan a video file. It was security footage from one of Harlan's recent jobs. Footage that had been edited to make it look like Harlan was stealing from the client's home. "I've got 12 more just like it. plus testimony from Delaney about your drinking problem, your gambling debts, your history of violence. Amazing what a loving wife will say to protect her family's financial future. Harlan studied the fake footage. It was good work, professional grade. Someone had put real money into framing him. You're asking me to help you rob my own clients. I'm asking you to be smart. Delaney's already on board. Your daughter thinks you're a hero who works too hard for too little money. Wouldn't you rather be a hero who can actually provide for his family? What happens to my reputation when your clients get robbed? You'll be shocked and devastated, of course. Just another sufferer of the crime wave. But don't worry, we'll make sure you're well compensated for the damage to your business. Julian was enjoying this. The power, the control, the moment when a man realizes he's been outplayed. But he'd made a crucial error in judgment. He'd assumed Harlan would break. I need time to think about it, Harlan said. You've got until Monday. After that, the videos go to the police, Delaney files for divorce, and you lose everything anyway. But hey, at least you'll have your integrity. Julian packed up his equipment with practiced efficiency. One more thing, Harlan. Delaney doesn't know about tonight. Let's keep it that way. She still thinks you're the sweet, clueless husband who trusts her completely. I'd hate to disappoint her. He left through the back door, whistling. Harlan stood alone in the empty house, USB drive burning in his pocket. He thought about his daughter's question. Are you guys having problems? They were about to have much bigger problems. The next morning, Harlan called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Instead of working, he drove to the bank and requested copies of all transactions on their joint accounts for the past 2 years. The pattern was subtle, but clear once you knew what to look for. Small transfers to shell companies, business expenses that didn't match Delaney's travel schedule, equipment purchases that never appeared in their home or her office. Over the past 18 months, nearly $40,000 had been funneled through fake businesses tied to Julian's operation. But the most damaging discovery came when Harlan accessed Delaney's cloud storage account, the same account that had cached the image on Mrs. Pollock's smart lock. The photos and videos stored there told the story of a relationship that had been going on for over 2 years. Julian and Delaney in hotel rooms across the country. Julian and Delaney at business dinners with potential marks. Julian and Delaney laughing over documents that Harlan now recognized as his own business records. In one video, clearly shot in Julian's apartment, Delaney was holding a legal document. Power of attorney, she said to the camera. He signed it 3 years ago when I had that minor surgery. Completely forgot about it. This makes everything so much easier. Julian's voice from behind the camera. He really doesn't pay attention to anything, does he? Harlan lives in his own little world, always has. It's actually kind of sad. Harlan saved everything to multiple drives, then sat in his van outside the bank, planning his next move. They thought he was weak, distracted, easy to manipulate. They were about to learn how wrong they were. His phone rang. Delaney. Hi, honey. How are you? How's Amara? We're good. When are you coming home? That's actually why I'm calling. The conference got extended again. I might not be back until next Tuesday. Another week? I know. But this is a huge opportunity. There are buyers here from 3 different chains. If I can close these deals, it could change everything for us. Sounds important. It is. Listen, I need to ask you something. My credit card got declined yesterday. Could you transfer some money from savings to checking? Just a couple thousand to cover expenses? Harlan looked at the bank statements spread across his dashboard. She already had access to their accounts. She didn't need him to transfer anything. This was a test, checking to see if he suspected anything. Of course. How much do you need? 5,000 should cover it. You're amazing, Harlan. I love you. Love you too. He hung up and immediately called the bank. Instead of transferring money to checking, he moved their entire savings account to a new account in his name only. Then he called their investment advisor and put a freeze on all joint assets pending a review of their financial situation. By the time Delaney tried to access their money again, she'd find nothing but empty accounts and closed doors. That afternoon, Harlan drove to Julian's rental car location and had a quiet conversation with the manager. 20 minutes later, he had copies of Julian's rental agreement, including his Phoenix address and credit card information. The same credit card that had been used to book hotel rooms in 17 different cities over the past year. Harlan cross-referenced those dates with Delaney's business travel schedule. Perfect match. He was building a timeline, a case file, a complete picture of their operation. But more than that, he was building a trap. Saturday morning, Amara noticed the changes immediately. Dad, did you get new locks for the house? Just upgrading our security. Can't be too careful these days. Mom's going to freak when she can't get in. I'll make sure she gets the new codes. But Harlan had no intention of giving Delaney the codes. When she came home, she'd find herself locked out of her own house. Then the real conversation would begin. Amara studied him over breakfast. "You're scaring me a little, Dad. You're acting like, I don't know, like you're getting ready for something bad to happen. What if I told you that something bad was already happening and I was just getting ready to fix it? I'd ask what you needed me to do." The simple loyalty in her voice almost broke him. "Just trust me, okay? No matter what happens in the next few weeks, remember that I love you and everything I do is to protect our family. Even if Mom doesn't understand, especially if Mom doesn't understand." Sunday afternoon, Harlan got a call from an unknown number. "Mr. Witt, this is Brielle Dumas. I believe you know my ex-husband, Julian Rake." The name hit him like a punch. "How did you get this number?" "Julian's been using your name as a reference for several business deals. I thought you should know that the FBI is investigating him for wire fraud. There's a warrant out for his arrest." Harlan pulled over to the side of the road. "Wire fraud?" "He's been running fake investment schemes across multiple states, uses legitimate local businesses as fronts to make his operation look credible. The FBI thinks he's stolen over $2 million in the past 3 years." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I was married to him for 8 years. I know how he operates. He finds vulnerable people, gains their trust, then destroys their lives. If he's using your business, you're in danger." "What kind of danger?" "When the FBI closes in, Julian burns everything. Partners, girlfriends, anyone who can connect him to the crimes. He's done it before." Harlan felt the pieces clicking together. "There's a woman involved, someone he's been working with." "There always is. Julian's very good at finding women who think they're smarter than everyone else. He convinces them they're partners, but really they're just another mark." "What happens to them?" "They usually end up in prison while Julian disappears with all the money." The line was quiet for a moment. Then Brielle said, "Mr. Witt, if you're involved with Julian in any way, you need to get out now. And if someone you care about is involved with him, you need to warn them. He's not just a con artist. He's dangerous." After she hung up, Harlan sat in his van, processing what he'd learned. Delaney thought she was playing Julian, using him to escape her boring suburban life. But Julian was playing a much deeper game. The question was, did Delaney know about the FBI investigation? He found his answer that evening when he checked the cloud storage account again. A new video had been uploaded just hours earlier. Julian and Delaney in what looked like a hotel room, but she was crying. "You said this was just insurance fraud," Delaney was saying. "You never mentioned the other stuff." "What other stuff?" Julian's voice was cold, different from the charming persona he'd used with Harlan. "I'm not stupid, Julian. I know what happens when rich people lose millions of dollars. They don't just write it off, they call the FBI. The FBI doesn't know anything. My contact at the bank says there are federal investigators asking questions about shell companies. Companies with names I recognize from our paperwork. Your contact needs to keep his mouth shut. This is getting out of control. I wanted to leave Harlan, not destroy him, and I definitely didn't want to go to prison." "Prison?" Julian laughed. "Baby, if we do this right, we'll be drinking champagne on a beach somewhere while the FBI is still trying to figure out what happened. And if we don't do it right, then we stick to the original plan. Your husband takes the fall, you play the innocent sufferer, and I disappear with the emergency fund." "What emergency fund?" The silence stretched long enough that Harlan could hear his own heartbeat. "Julian, what emergency fund?" "The one I've been building with the money from your joint accounts. You didn't think I'd trust everything to someone I've only known for 2 years, did you?" The video ended there. Harlan sat in his kitchen staring at the black screen. Delaney had been played just as thoroughly as he had. The only difference was that she'd been an active participant in her own destruction. He almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Monday morning, Julian called right on schedule. "Have you made your decision, Harlan?" "I'm in. Smart man. Meet me at the warehouse on Industrial Boulevard tonight, 8 o'clock. We'll go over the details of your first job." "What kind of job?" "Simple stuff. You unlock the door, I disable the security system, we take some pictures for insurance purposes. Easy money." "How much money?" $50,000 for the first job. More if you prove reliable." $50,000. Enough to make a desperate man do stupid things. Enough to make Julian think he'd won. I'll see you tonight. Oh, and Harlan? Come alone. And don't tell anyone about our arrangement. Some of our clients prefer discretion. Harlan spent the afternoon making final preparations. He loaded his van with equipment that looked like normal locksmith tools but had been modified for a very different purpose. He test-fired the digital recorder. He charged his phone and made sure his camera was working. Most importantly, he called Reggie at the police station. Reg, I need another favor. A big one. What's going on, Harlan? You've been acting strange lately. I'm about to do something that's either very smart or very stupid. If I don't call you by 10 o'clock tonight, I need you to go to 1247 Elm Street and look for my van. Harlan, what the hell? I can't explain right now, but if something happens to me, there's a USB drive taped under my kitchen sink. Everything's on there. Give it to the FBI. The FBI? Jesus, Harlan. What have you gotten yourself into? I'm getting myself out of it, I hope. At 7:30, Harlan drove to the warehouse district. The meeting location was perfect for an ambush. Isolated, no witnesses, multiple escape routes. But it was also perfect for his purposes. Julian was already there, leaning against his rental car like he owned the world. Next to him stood two other men Harlan didn't recognize. The game had just changed. Harlan, right on time. These are my associates. We call them the cleanup crew. The two men looked like ex-military, professional, alert, dangerous. This wasn't about insurance fraud anymore. I thought this was just between us, Harlan said. Plans change. Don't worry, these guys are just here to make sure everything goes smoothly. Think of them as quality control. One of the men stepped forward. Empty your pockets, phone, keys, everything. Harlan hesitated. Why? Because I said so. This was the moment of truth. Harlan could turn around, walk away, and spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. Or he could trust his preparation and see this through to the end. He handed over his phone and keys, but kept the digital recorder hidden in his shirt pocket. Good, Julian said. Now let's talk about tonight's job. There's a house in Riverside Heights. Old couple, probably asleep by now. Very expensive art collection, minimal security. You get us inside, we take what we need, everyone goes home happy. You're talking about robbery. I'm talking about redistribution of wealth. These people have more money than they could spend in 3 lifetimes. We're just helping them share. The casual arrogance was back, but Harlan could see something different in Julian's eyes now. Desperation. He was running out of time and options. What's my cut? Same as we discussed, 50,000? What about the other jobs? The insurance fraud? Julian smiled. There are no other jobs, Harlan. After tonight, you're going to have a terrible accident. Very tragic. The grieving widow will inherit your business, and my new partners will help her expand into more profitable territories. Delaney knows about this. Delaney thinks she knows about this. She's waiting in a hotel room in Phoenix, expecting me to call when the job is done. Instead, she's going to get a very different kind of phone call. One of the associates handed Julian a tool. Time to go. They drove in convoy to Riverside Heights, Harlan's van followed by Julian's rental car. During the drive, Harlan managed to turn on the digital recorder. Everything from here on would be documented. The target house was a sprawling mansion set back from the road, surrounded by mature trees and expensive landscaping. Harlan could see lights on in several windows. The residents were still awake. I thought you said they'd be asleep, Harlan said. Change of plans. We go in hot and fast. This wasn't robbery anymore. This was home invasion, possibly worse. I'm not doing this, Harlan said. Yes, you are. Julian pressed the tool against Harlan's ribs. Because if you don't, I'll make sure Amara has the same kind of accident you're about to have. The mention of his daughter's name flipped a switch in Harlan's brain. All the careful planning, all the patient preparation, all the civilized restraint gone in an instant. He grabbed Julian's wrist and twisted, using techniques he'd learned in high school wrestling 30 years ago. The tool went off, but the bullet went wide. In the same motion, Harlan drove his modified lockpick into Julian's solar plexus. Julian dropped, gasping for air. The two associates were out of their car and running toward him, but Harlan was already moving. He rolled under his van and came up on the other side, using the vehicle as cover. His modified tools were scattered across the ground, but he managed to grab a tension wrench that had been sharpened to a point. The first associate came around the van low and fast. Harlan caught him with an uppercut to the throat. The man went down hard. The second associate was smarter. He stayed back and started shooting, using the rental car as cover. Bullets shattered Harlan's windshield and punctured his tires. But Harlan had one advantage they didn't expect. He knew locks, and he knew how to get into places where he wasn't supposed to be. While the gunman was focused on the van, Harlan circled wide and approached the rental car from behind. The trunk was unlocked. Most people never thought to secure their escape route. Inside the trunk, he found spare ammunition, zip ties, and a laptop computer. The laptop was still logged in, showing emails between Julian and someone named DW, Delaney Witt, his wife. The most recent email was from 3 hours ago. H is asking questions. Think he knows. May need to accelerate timeline. Julian's response. Don't worry. The problem will be solved tonight. Harlan pocketed the laptop and kept moving. He could hear sirens in the distance. Someone in the mansion had called the police, which meant he had maybe 5 minutes to finish this. He found Julian leaning against a tree, still struggling to breathe. The tool was nowhere to be seen. It's over, Harlan said. You have no idea what you've done, Julian gasped. Do you know who I work for? Do you know what happens to people who mess with this operation? I know what happens to people who threaten my daughter. Harlan zip-tied Julian's hands behind his back, then used his van's tow cable to secure him to the tree. By the time the police arrived, Julian would be wrapped up like a Christmas present. The two associates were less cooperative. They'd recovered from Harlan's initial attack and were now hunting him through the trees surrounding the mansion. Professional butchers don't stay down long, but Harlan had home field advantage. He'd done security work for half the houses in this neighborhood. He knew which ones had dogs, which ones had motion sensors, which ones had panic rooms. He led the gunmen on a chase through backyards and garden sheds, always staying just ahead of them, always moving toward his ultimate destination. The Riverside Heights community had one feature that most people didn't know about: a storm drain system that connected all the houses to a central pumping station. Harlan had installed locks on several access points over the years. He dropped into the storm drain through a maintenance cover, then used his lockpicks to secure the entrance behind him. The associates could follow if they wanted, but they'd be doing it in single file through a narrow concrete tunnel where their tools wouldn't help them. They were smart enough not to try. Harlan emerged from the drain system 6 blocks away, near the community center. His phone had been destroyed in the fight, but he found a payphone, apparently the only one left in the city, and called Reggie. It's Harlan. I'm okay, but you need to get to Riverside Heights. There's a man tied to a tree near 1247 Oakmont Drive. His name is Julian Rake, and the FBI wants him. Harlan, what the hell? Check the USB drive I told you about. Everything's there. And Reg, when you arrest him, make sure he calls his lawyer. He's going to need one. Harlan hung up and started the long walk home. His van was shot full of holes. His equipment was scattered across a crime scene, and his marriage was about to implode. But Julian was finished, and the FBI would have everything they needed to unravel the entire operation. Now came the hard part. Delaney was scheduled to return home Thursday evening. Harlan spent Wednesday preparing for her arrival like a general preparing for battle. He changed all the locks in the house, not just the front door, but every entrance, every window, every possible way in or out. Then he installed new security cameras in every room. When Delaney tried to enter their home, she'd find herself locked out. And when she called for help, everything would be recorded. Thursday at 6 p.m., Harlan was sitting in his kitchen when he heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, he watched Delaney try her key in the front door lock. When it didn't work, she tried again. Then she knocked. Harlan, are you home? My key isn't working. He didn't answer. She walked around to the back door, tried that lock, then returned to the front. This time she pounded harder. Harlan, I know you're in there. What's wrong with the locks? Still nothing. Finally, she pulled out her phone and called him. He could hear it ringing in the kitchen, but he let it go to voicemail. She called 3 more times, each message getting angrier. This is ridiculous, Harlan. I've been traveling for a week. I'm exhausted, and I just want to come home. Whatever game you're playing, it's not funny. On the 5th call, he answered. Hello, Delaney. Thank God. What's wrong with the locks? Did we get robbed? No robbery. I upgraded our security system. New locks, new codes, new everything. Well, can you let me in? I'm standing on our front porch like an idiot. I know. I can see you on the security camera. The silence stretched long enough for her to process what he'd said. Security camera? Since when do we have security cameras? Since I found out my wife has been having an affair with a federal fugitive. More silence. Then, Harlan, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Julian Rake was arrested Monday night. The FBI has been looking for him for months. Wire fraud, investment scams, identity theft. He's been using our marriage as cover for a criminal operation. I don't know anyone named Julian Rake. Harlan turned on the outdoor speakers he'd installed earlier that day. Delaney's own voice filled the evening air, crystal clear from the cloud storage recordings. Julian, what emergency fund? Her face went white. She looked around frantically, as if the neighbors might be listening. Which they probably were. Turn that off. The one I've been building with the money from your joint accounts. Harlan, turn it off right now. You didn't think I'd trust everything to someone I've only known for 2 years, did you? Delaney was backing toward her car now, but Harlan wasn't done. This is my favorite part, he said into the intercom. Wait for it. Julian's voice continued. Your husband takes the fall, you play the innocent sufferer, and I disappear with the emergency fund. Delaney reached her car but couldn't get the door open. Her hands were shaking too badly. Here's what's going to happen, Harlan said. You're going to get in your car and drive away. You're not going to call me, you're not going to call Amara, and you're not going to come back here. Ever. This is my house too. You can't just lock me out. Actually, I can. Check your bank accounts. Check your credit cards. Check your investment portfolio. Everything's frozen pending a federal investigation into your business practices. She finally got her car door open and slumped into the driver's seat. Harlan, please, we need to talk about this. We're talking right now. This is me explaining that your boyfriend burned you along with everyone else. The FBI found financial records showing he stole nearly $3 million over the past 3 years. Most of it was stolen from elderly clients who trusted him with their retirement savings. I didn't know about any of that. Doesn't matter. You were his business partner. You signed documents. You moved money. You helped him target sufferers. In the eyes of the law, you're just as guilty as he is. Delaney started crying then, ugly, desperate tears that might have moved him a week ago. Now they just sounded like background noise. What about Amara? She needs her mother. Amara needs a mother who isn't a federal criminal. Since that's not you anymore, she'll have to settle for a father who loves her enough to protect her from people like you. I never meant for any of this to happen. Yes, you did. You just didn't mean to get caught. Harlan turned off the intercom and watched through the window as Delaney sat in her car, crying into her steering wheel. After 20 minutes, she started the engine and drove away. He never saw her again. Friday morning, Special Agent Patricia Hendricks from the FBI showed up at Harlan's door. She was younger than he'd expected, with the kind of sharp intelligence that missed nothing. Mr. Witt, I understand you've been in contact with Julian Rake. He contacted me. I just played along until I could figure out what he was planning. What he was planning was to frame you for wire fraud and then have you eliminated. You're lucky to be alive. She sat at his kitchen table and went through everything methodically. The USB drives, the recorded conversations, the financial records, the cloud storage files. By the time she finished, Harlan's kitchen looked like a federal evidence locker. Your wife is going to be arrested as soon as we locate her, Agent Hendricks said. Do you have any idea where she might go? She has a sister in Denver, but I don't think she'll run. Delaney's not stupid. She knows her best chance is to cooperate and hope for a plea deal. What about you? Are you willing to testify? Against Julian, absolutely. Against Delaney. Harlan thought about Amara, who was at school, unaware that her life was about to change forever. Yes, I'll testify against her too. Agent Hendricks packed up her files. We'll need you to come in next week to make an official statement. In the meantime, you should probably get a lawyer, even though you're a sufferer here. This is going to get complicated. After she left, Harlan sat alone in his kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of his old life. In a few hours, Amara would come home from school, and he'd have to explain why her mother wasn't coming back. But first, he had one more call to make. Julian answered on the second ring. Prison phones had a distinctive echo. I wondered when you'd call, Julian said. Just wanted to make sure you understood what happened. I underestimated you. Won't happen again. There won't be an again. You're looking at 20 years minimum. Wire, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, attempted homicide. The FBI has everything. They have what you gave them, but they don't have everything. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been doing this for a long time, Harlan. I know how to protect myself. Your wife, on the other hand, she was never anything more than a useful amateur. She's not my wife anymore. No, I suppose she's not. Tell me, how did it feel? Destroying your own family to get revenge on me? It felt like taking out the trash. Julian laughed. You know what? I actually respect that. Most people would have just called the police and let the system handle it. But you wanted to do it yourself. You wanted to watch it all burn down. I wanted justice. Justice is what the winners call revenge after the fact, and you definitely won this round. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Julian said, But here's the thing about winning, Harlan. It's habit forming. Now that you know what it feels like to completely destroy someone who crossed you, you're going to want to do it again. I'm not like you. No, you're worse. I never pretended to be a good person. But you? You're going to spend the rest of your life telling yourself you had no choice, that you did what any loving father would do. And maybe that's even true, but it doesn't change what you've become. Harlan hung up without another word. That evening, he sat Amara down in the living room and told her everything. About the affair, about the crimes, about the investigation. She listened without interrupting, her face getting paler with each revelation. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. So Mom's not coming home? No, she's not. And she really did all those things? The stealing and the lying? Yes. What's going to happen to her? Prison, probably, for a long time. Amara nodded slowly. What's going to happen to us? We're going to be fine, better than fine. We're going to build a life based on truth instead of lies. Just the two of us? Just the two of us. She curled up next to him on the couch, something she hadn't done since she was little. Dad, I'm proud of you for fighting back. Even though it meant losing your mother? I lost my mother a long time ago. I just didn't realize it until now. 6 months later, Harlan was rebuilding his business when he got a call from Agent Hendricks. Julian Rake was found dead in his cell this morning, she said. Apparent self-destruction. Apparent? He hung himself with bed sheets, left a note confessing to everything and clearing you of any wrongdoing. Very convenient. What about Delaney? She took a plea deal, 8 years in federal prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 5. Will she serve the full sentence? Probably not. She's been very cooperative, helped us recover almost $2 million that Julian had hidden in offshore accounts. After Agent Hendricks hung up, Harlan sat in his shop, thinking about justice and revenge and the difference between them. Julian was dead. Delaney was in prison. The FBI had recovered most of the stolen money. Everyone had gotten exactly what they deserved. A year later, Harlan was installing new locks on a mansion in Riverside Heights when he realized he was working on the same house where everything had started. The elderly couple who lived there had bought Julian's security system right before his arrest. They'd been sufferers too, in their own way. Mr. Witt? The old woman stood in the doorway, watching him work. I just wanted to thank you for what you did. That man might have robbed us blind if you hadn't stopped him. Just doing my job, ma'am. No, it was more than that. You saved a lot of people from a very bad man. Harlan finished installing the new deadbolt and handed her the keys. Sometimes the system works exactly the way it's supposed to, and sometimes it takes someone like you to make sure it does. That evening, Harlan picked up Amara from soccer practice. She was 17 now, a senior in high school, already accepted to 3 different colleges. She'd grown up a lot in the past 2 years. How was practice? He asked. Good. Coach says I might get a scholarship offer from state. That's fantastic. They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Amara said, Dad, do you ever regret what happened? With Mom, I mean? It was a question she asked every few months as if she needed to make sure his answer hadn't changed. No, Harlan said. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing it. Good, because I don't regret it either. They pulled into their driveway, the same house where it had all begun, but different now, cleaner, honest, free of the rot that had been eating away at their foundation for years. Harlan had learned something important during those dark months. There's a difference between being a good person and being a weak person. For most of his adult life, he'd confused the two. He'd thought that being kind meant being passive, that being loving meant being blind to betrayal. But real strength wasn't about avoiding conflict. Real strength was about protecting the people you loved from those who would damage them, even when those people were supposed to love you back, especially then. The next morning, Harlan got a call from a potential new client, a woman whose husband had been acting suspicious lately. She'd found some concerning financial records and wanted to know if Harlan could help her figure out what was really going on. I'm sorry, Harlan said. I'm a locksmith, not a private investigator. But I heard about what you did with that man who was stealing from people. Everyone says you're the person to call when someone is trying to cheat you. Harlan looked out the window of his shop at the bustling street beyond. Somewhere out there, other Julian rakes were running their cons. Other Delaney's were betraying their families. Other sufferers were waiting to discover that their lives had been built on lies. "Ma'am," he said finally, "I think you should call the police. The police won't help until after something happens. I need help now." "Then call a private investigator or a divorce lawyer. But don't call me." "Why not?" Harlan thought about Julian's words from that final phone call. "Justice is what winners call revenge after the fact." "Because I'm not that person anymore," he said, and hung up. But as he went back to work on a simple lock repair, Harlan couldn't shake the feeling that Julian had been right about one thing. Winning was habit forming, and somewhere deep inside, a part of him was already wondering what the next victory might look like. 2 years after Julian's passing, Harlan was closing up his shop when a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. For a moment, his heart stopped. The profile looked like Delaney's, the same hair, the same posture, but when the woman got out, it wasn't his ex-wife. It was her sister Claire, who he hadn't seen since the arrest. "Hello, Harlan." "Claire, what are you doing here?" "Delaney asked me to give you something." She handed him a letter, sealed but with his name written in Delaney's handwriting. "She's getting out next month," Claire said. "Early release for good behavior." Harlan turned the letter over in his hands. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because she wants to see Amara. She's her mother, Harlan. She has rights. She gave up those rights when she committed felonies. A judge might see it differently." Claire got back in her car without another word. Harlan stood in the empty parking lot, holding a letter from a woman he'd thought was gone from his life forever. That night, he opened it. "Harlan," it began, "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know that I've changed. Prison does that to a person. I've had 3 years to think about what I did, about the mistakes I made, about the family I destroyed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know that's impossible, but I am asking for a chance to explain myself to our daughter. She deserves to hear my side of the story before she makes up her mind about me forever. I'll be staying at Claire's house when I get out. If you're willing to let me see Amara, even just once, I'd be grateful. If not, I'll understand. Despite everything that happened between us, I want you to know that the years we had together weren't all lies. I did love you, Harlan. I just loved the idea of a different life more." "Delaney." Harlan read the letter 3 times, then showed it to Amara. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think she's probably telling the truth about being sorry. Prison changes people." "Do you want to see her?" Amara was quiet for a long time. "Maybe. Just to get some closure. But not alone. And not here. We could meet somewhere public. A restaurant, maybe? Would you be okay with that?" Harlan thought about it. 3 years ago, the idea of sitting across a table from Delaney would have filled him with rage. Now it just made him tired. "I'll be okay. The question is whether you will be." "I think so. I'm not a little kid anymore, Dad. I can handle seeing my mother without falling apart." 2 weeks later, they met at a chain restaurant in the next town over. Delaney looked older, thinner, worn down by the weight of consequences, but her eyes were clearer than Harlan remembered. Prison had either broken her or rebuilt her. "Thank you for coming," she said to Amara. "You've grown up so much." 3 years will do that. "I know you probably have questions." "I don't actually." Amara's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "I know what you did. I know why you did it. I even understand why you thought it was a good idea at the time." Delaney looked surprised. "You do? You were unhappy. You felt trapped. You met someone who made you feel alive again, and you got caught up in something bigger than you could handle." Amara paused. "The problem is that you decided your happiness was more important than our family." "That's not. I never meant." "It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did." Harlan watched his daughter face down her mother with the kind of quiet strength that took him 40 years to develop. She was better than both of them. "I'm sorry," Delaney said finally. "I know that's not enough, but I am sorry." "I know, and I forgive you. But forgiving you doesn't mean I want you in my life." "Amara, I'm going to college in the fall. I'm starting fresh, building something real, something honest. And I can't do that with someone who might decide to blow it all up again if she gets bored." Delaney started crying then, but Amara didn't. She just sat there, composed and final, delivering a verdict that was both merciful and absolute. "I hope you build a good life for yourself," Amara continued. "I really do. but it's going to be a life without me in it. They left Delaney sitting alone at the table, surrounded by the ruins of a relationship she'd destroyed years earlier. In the car, Amara was quiet for a long time. "You okay?" Harlan asked. "Yeah, I think I am." "Any regrets?" "About seeing her?" "No. I needed to know if there was anything left worth saving. Now I know there isn't." "That's a hard lesson to learn at 18. I learned it watching you, Dad. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you will hurt you worse than strangers ever could. But that doesn't mean you stop believing in love. It just means you get better at recognizing the real thing." 6 months later, Harlan was helping Amara pack for college when she found a box of old photos in the back of her closet. Pictures of their family from before everything fell apart. Christmas mornings, birthday parties, vacation trips to the beach. "Do you want to keep any of these?" she asked. Harlan looked through the photos, seeing the ghost of the man he used to be. Trusting, optimistic, blissfully unaware of the rot eating away at his foundation. "Keep the ones with just you and me," he said. "Get rid of the rest." "Are you sure? Some of these are really good pictures." "They're pictures of people who don't exist anymore." Amara nodded and sorted through the box, saving a handful of father-daughter moments and tossing the rest. As she worked, she said, "Dad, do you think you'll ever get married again?" "I don't know. Maybe. If I meet someone I can trust." "How will you know if you can trust them?" Harlan thought about locks and keys, about security systems and hidden cameras, about all the ways people try to protect themselves from being hurt. "I guess I'll know because I won't feel like I need to check up on them." That's a good answer. That evening, after Amara left for her dorm room, Harlan sat alone in his house for the first time in 19 years. The silence was profound. No teenage music, no phone conversations, no one else's schedule to accommodate. He could have been lonely, should have been lonely. Instead, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years: peace. His phone rang. Another potential client with another cheating spouse story. Another person whose world was about to come apart. Witt Locksmith Services. "Mr. Witt, I heard about what you did to those people who were stealing from folks around here. I think my husband might be involved in something similar, and I was hoping—" "Ma'am, I'm a locksmith. If you think your husband is committing crimes, you should call the police. But they won't listen until someone gets hurt. You know how to stop these people before they destroy everything." Harlan looked out his front window at the suburban street where he'd lived for almost 2 decades. Quiet houses hiding private dramas. Families that looked perfect from the outside, but were rotting from within. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah. Sarah Hendricks." "Sarah, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Whatever your husband is doing, whatever you think he's doing, there are legal ways to handle it. Lawyers, investigators, law enforcement, people who are trained to deal with these situations without making them worse. But what if nothing? You call a lawyer tomorrow morning. You document everything. You protect yourself and your family through the system. You do not try to be your own version of justice. Why won't you help me?" "Because I learned the hard way that revenge and justice aren't the same thing. And once you start down that path, it changes you into someone you might not recognize." He hung up and turned off his phone. Outside, the street was quiet and peaceful. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, mostly unaware of the hunters that moved among them. But they would figure it out eventually, just like he had. And when they did, they'd have to decide what kind of person they wanted to be in response. Harlan had made his choice. He'd fought his war and won his victory. But the cost had been everything he thought he knew about himself. Now, in the silence of his empty house, he was finally beginning to understand the difference between being strong and being broken, being right and being destroyed, being a protector and being a hunter. The locksmith's last customer had been himself, and he'd finally found a way to secure the one thing that mattered most: his own soul. 3 months later, Harlan sold his business and moved to a small town in Montana where nobody knew his story. He bought a cabin near a lake and spent his days fixing simple problems for simple people. Broken gates, stuck windows, doors that wouldn't close properly. It was honest work, clean work, work that built things up instead of tearing them down. On quiet evenings, he would sit on his porch and watch the sunset paint the mountains gold. Sometimes he thought about Julian, rotting in a prison grave. Sometimes he thought about Delaney, trying to rebuild a life from nothing. Sometimes he thought about the choices that had led them all to their separate ends. But mostly, he thought about Amara, starting her second year of college, building a future based on truth instead of lies. She called every Sunday, full of stories about classes and friends and boys who wanted to take her to dinner. "Are you happy, Dad?" she asked during one of their conversations. "I'm at peace," he said. "I think that might be better than happy. I love you. I love you too, kiddo, more than you'll ever know." After they hung up, Harlan went back to work on his latest project, a custom lock for a neighbor's antique chest. The mechanism was delicate, precise, requiring patience and skill to get it exactly right. It was the kind of work that reminded him why he'd become a locksmith in the first place. Not for the power to lock people out, but for the satisfaction of helping them secure the things they valued most. As the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Harlan finished the lock and tested it one final time. It turned smoothly, clicked into place with a solid sound, and held firm against pressure. Perfect. For the first time in years, Harlan Witt slept without checking the security system, without listening for footsteps in the dark, without wondering who might be plotting against him. He slept the deep, dreamless sleep of a man who had finally learned the most important lesson of all. The only person you really need to protect yourself from is the person you might become if you're not careful. And he had been very, very careful.